The first time David saw Goliath, the giant seemed to swallow the horizon. He was not just a man. He was a mountain, a storm condensed into human form. His armor glinted under the harsh sun, each piece polished, intimidating and impossibly heavy. The ground itself seemed to tremble with his presence. David, barely more than a boy, stood on the opposite hill, clutching nothing but a simple sling and a satchel of stones. Every instinct screamed at him to turn and run, to hide among the shadows where no one could see his trembling. But he could not, because the lives of his people rested on the fragile edge of his courage. His brothers had been posted in the valley, part of the army of Israel, but their faces were pale, taut with fear. They whispered among themselves, hands shaking, eyes flicking nervously toward the giant who spat threats across the field. "Who is this boy to challenge me?" Goliath bellowed, voice carrying like thunder across the hills. "Am I not a man of war? Will you send a child to fight me?" The soldiers flinched, but David did not. He had come to deliver food, to bring bread and cheese to his brothers. And yet here he was confronted with a question that had no easy answer. David's heart pounded as he stepped forward. He felt the weight of every stare, the doubt that simmered even among his own people. But he remembered something from long nights alone with his father's sheep. Fear existed to be faced, not to be obeyed. He thought of the lions and bears that had attacked his flock, of the nights he had defended them with nothing but a shepherd's staff and stones. Each time, survival had demanded boldness, precision, and faith in something greater than strength alone. Goliath laughed, a deep, rolling sound that shook the air. "Do you come against me with sticks and stones, boy? Do you think the Lord of your fathers will save you when you face me?" David did not reply. Words were unnecessary. Every second he delayed was another moment for fear to settle in, but he refused it. He bent to the stream, picking 5 smooth stones from the water, each one a promise in his hand. They were small, unassuming, and perfect. They were everything the giant was not. He approached the battlefield, each step measured, deliberate, as the army of Israel watched in silence. Their hope had thinned to a fragile thread, and David's courage became their beacon. Even his brothers looked at him with a mixture of disbelief and awe. No one could believe a shepherd boy might stand against a terror. That was Goliath. And yet they had no other choice. Goliath roared again, advancing, armor clanking, sword raised. The ground seemed impossibly distant beneath David's feet, yet he moved as if pulled by something invisible, something unrelenting. He reached the center of the valley, his sling ready. He did not flinch as the giant raised his massive shield and sword, every motion a declaration of the power David lacked. He did not flinch because he had faced fear before and had found it wanting. Then, in a single fluid motion, David swung his sling. The stone arced through the air, a tiny speck against the sky, and yet it carried everything that fear could not hold. Time seemed to slow. Soldiers on both sides held their breath. The giant did not see it coming. The stone struck his forehead with unerring precision. He stumbled, disbelief etched across his massive features, and fell to ground with sound that echoed across the valley, silencing the air. For a heartbeat, everything was still. The army of Israel stared, jaws tight, eyes wide. Then came the first cheers, hesitant at first, and then loud and unstoppable. The giant was fallen. The impossible had been accomplished. David stood over him, heart still hammering, hands shaking with the weight of what he had done. It was not strength alone that had won the day. It was courage, precision, and a refusal to be ruled by fear. But victory brought no immediate comfort. As he stood there, a surge of questions washed over him. What would the people think of him now? How would his brothers respond? Would the army of the Philistines accept defeat so easily? Or was this only the first act in a war far from over? David realized that triumph in a single moment did not erase the long shadow of conflict or the price of survival. The king Saul approached cautiously, awe and suspicion mingling on his face. He looked down at the boy who had slain the giant and saw not just courage but audacity, a spark that could ignite hope or rebellion. "Who are you?" Saul asked, not out of curiosity but necessity. "You've done what no soldier dared." David's reply was simple, steady. "I am a shepherd. I fight to protect my people." Saul's eyes lingered on him, measuring the boy's resolve. the raw confidence that came from knowing one's purpose. He knew this was no ordinary victory. He knew that David would change the course of events in ways no one could yet foresee. And he also knew that such a spark could not be contained for long. As night fell over the valley, the soldiers returned to their camps, whispers filling the air with awe and disbelief. Goliath's body had been removed, but the shadow of what he represented lingered like smoke. Fear had not vanished entirely. It had shifted. Now it whispered that David was different, a force that would shape the fate of kingdoms. David, alone for a moment beneath the stars, held his sling loosely at his side. His body was exhausted, but his mind raced with the enormity of what had happened. Victory was not an end. It was an invitation. He knew the battle with the giant had been only the beginning. Larger wars, greater threats, and impossible challenges lay ahead. And yet, he felt a quiet certainty, a recognition that courage, when paired with purpose and faith in one's skill, could achieve what others deemed impossible. He looked toward the horizon, where the first hints of dawn painted the sky. Somewhere beyond, enemies stirred. Allies would falter. His own path would be tested far beyond the valley where Goliath fell. David clenched the stones in his hand again, not as weapons, but as reminders that the small and overlooked could carry the weight of destiny. The whispers among the Philistine army were growing. Leaders were sending scouts, messengers, and threats. They had seen their champion fall, but they had not yet understood the boy who had bested him. David's victory had shifted the balance, but the war had only just begun. Every town, every battlefield, and every king would soon feel the ripple of this moment. And in the silence before the sun fully rose, David understood something more profound than any victory. Fear could be faced, doubt could be resisted, and courage could create miracles. But the road ahead would demand far more than a single stone. It would demand patience, wisdom, and the ability to inspire others to stand when reason screamed to flee. He did not yet know how his life would unfold. He did not yet know that he would rise to become king, that battles would test his character and resolve, that betrayal and heartbreak would stalk him even among friends and family. What he knew in that quiet, powerful moment was that he had faced the impossible, and he had survived. And that survival was only the first chapter. Beyond the valley, the Philistines regrouped, whispers of vengeance weaving through their ranks. Scouts returned with news that unsettled even the bravest of Israelite soldiers. David's triumph had been bold, but the giant of the world, both literal and metaphorical, were far from vanquished. The young shepherd raised his eyes to the rising sun, letting the warmth touch his face. The shadow of the next battle loomed, uncertain and terrifying, and for the first time, David felt the weight of destiny settle fully on his shoulders. He was no longer just a boy, no longer just a shepherd. He was a symbol, a spark of hope, and the world would soon demand everything he had to give. And in that moment, as the cheers of his people faded into the distance and the whispers of enemies grew louder, David understood the truth that would follow him all his days. A single stone could fell a giant, but the path ahead would require courage far beyond the battlefield, and the story of his life had only just begun.